Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 138 of the podcast. In this episode, I talk with Becky Rydman about how to reach your community by partnering with schools. So whether you serve in children's ministry or student ministry, there's probably a way that you could partner with schools in your community to help reach them, not just students who already are part of your church in those schools, but even kids and students who are part of those schools but aren't attending your church. So we kind of unpack her journey with that over the last 5 years or so. What does that look like as she has established a partnership with schools? And as you'll hear, a lot of it is small steps, relationally driven, and it's just grown over time. Before we jump into that interview, just want to let you know that I mentioned this last week, but a brand new course is available at Ministry Boost called The 5 Barriers to Volunteer Recruitment. It's a short course that I created to help you overcome the barriers you might be facing as you recruit volunteers. Most of these barriers are things I think are kind of hidden. You can't even see that they're getting in the way as you try to recruit volunteers. That course is an on-demand course. You take it at your own pace, just 5 sessions. You kind of look at each barrier, figure out if that's a barrier for your church. If so, how can you overcome it? And the course is normally $25, but for 2 weeks, you can get it for just $10. Just use the code podcast when you buy that, and you can get it for $10 just for the next 2 weeks. If you're listening to this when it comes out, go to ministryboost.org, click on the links there, and you can check out the course. For all the links and show notes from this episode, go to nickblevins.com/episode 138. But let's go ahead now and jump into my conversation with Becky Rydman about how she partnered with schools to reach those kids and students in her community. Well, today I'm joined by Becky Rydman on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Becky.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself and your church, and then we'll jump in and talk all about partnering with schools, which I'm excited to do. It's not something we get to talk about a lot on the podcast, but I think something a lot of leaders are interested in. So tell us about you and your church.
Sure. Well, I am wife to Tony, which is awesome. And we have 8.5-year-old Ellie and 6.5-year-old Cody. And they are a true joy and keep us on our toes. It's a lot of fun with them. And I am at McCord Road Christian Church as the children's ministry pastor. And I am in my 20th year, just finishing up my 20th year on staff there as children's ministry pastor, which blows my mind when I think about all those years. But it has been awesome just to go from seeing the church. I was the first hire after the pastor, senior pastor, and there are more kids in the ministry now at one service than there were in the people in the church back in the day. So it's been awesome to see the church grow, and it's been great too, just the challenges and the opportunities that it's given me to go from a smaller ministry. Now we have four services on Sunday morning with 4 hours of children's programming, and it's been a blast. So it's great. Our church is really growing strong. We experienced too a senior pastor who had been there for 34 years, and then the last year and a half we've had a new senior pastor who's come in with just amazing vision, and he's taken us in a great direction. So it's been a blast and a blessing to be part of that for so long.
That was going to be my next question, if it was the same pastor, the whole time. Because 20 years, a lot of times, more likely than not that you've maybe been through a pastoral change, among numerous other staff changes for that time. Have you graduated like kids like birth that've been there from birth?
Oh, yes.
You just now there long enough, but I wonder, that's kind of cool.
It is. It's very fun. And then when I first started, because we were so small, I also did student ministry. So then it's happened often where I have the children of kids who used to be in the ministry coming through and getting some second generation kids.
Yeah.
And which it's very fun. Yeah. So I started when I was 2 years old as
we're a church plant and we turned 13 this year. So we will be graduating kids that were 4 when we started the church, including my preschool director's twin daughters. So, but not quite there, it hasn't been long enough. to have any kids from birth all the way through. So that's awesome.
It is really great.
So you're passionate about partnering with schools as a church, and I think a lot of people are. You hear, I feel like you hear this more in the student ministry world than you do in the children's ministry world. So I'm excited to have this conversation as it relates to children's ministry. So, before we jump into like what it looks like for you and ideas you have and thoughts and what other churches are doing, talk a little bit about why. Well, like why is this important? Even why for you this is important.
Sure. So I did mention that I was in student ministry as well as children's ministry for a while. And so I knew it was important to go and have lunch with students and connect with them there. And then for years I thought, well, how do I get into the schools with children's ministry? Like, do you do that? Is that a thing you should do? And my background prior to starting at the church, I was in the public schools. I have a degree in elementary education. And so I graduated from college and went right into the workforce, teaching for 5 years in 5th and 6th grade in an elementary setting. And then God clearly called me very clearly into ministry. And so I remember at the time leaving I had resigned from teaching and had already been accepted or hired at the church. And I remember at the time thinking, Lord, is there some way that you're going to bridge this gap? Because I have a love for the education system and the classroom, but I also have this calling to ministry. And as I had thought, I figured God would do like an after school program or something like that. And it wasn't until recently that I realized, it's through the relationships that I've been building that God just naturally bridged that gap for me between church and school. And it was just kind of in hindsight that I realized, that's what he did. And all I did initially was started to volunteer in the school and start to build relationships there. But scripturally speaking, what really jumped out to me in John 21, with Jesus, the story of Jesus and the miraculous catch. So afterwards, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. And so the disciples were there. And then in verse 3, I'm going to go out to fish, Simon Peter told them. And they said, we'll go with you. So they went out and they got into the boat. But that night they caught nothing. And early in the next morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, friends, have you any fish? No, they answered. He said, throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. And when they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. And so I think what really sparked this with me, even recently, is the realization that there are more fish, as we're called to be fishers of men, there are more fish inside of the schools than there are inside of our church. And so looking at what Jesus did, he didn't ask the disciples to start and use this brand new technology in the new world of fishing. He took what they were already doing and just challenged them to think differently about it. So throw your net onto this side of the boat instead. And so what I have started to do is doing within the children's ministry world, do the same programming that I'm doing, but shift my thinking so that I'm more community focused or more community minded. So does that make sense so far?
It does. Yeah. And there's no doubt that, I've heard Rich Birch say that something like 94% of churches are not declining, but not growing as fast as their community. Mm-hmm. So even if they are growing, which most of them probably aren't growing, but even if they are, they're not growing as fast as the community. So it's like you said, there's just so many kids in schools in our area that are not a part of any church. So when you, like with that passion for it, obviously the teaching in your background, the connection makes sense. What did you do? Like, how did you get started to take that to become like a partnership? Did it kind of end up naturally, or was it this very intentional, here's a plan and I'm going to go after it?
It was, and it was intentional. So just looking, first of all, at what was the school that was closest in proximity to our church, and just going and meeting with the principal and saying, hey, I'm here. We are here. We are working and helping and blessing the same families and a lot of the same kids. but as a school principal, what are some needs that you have that the church could partner with you and just help? And he was very open, but this was probably 10 years ago, and the first thing he said was, "Oh, we really need help with landscaping." And I thought, "Oh, okay." Not what I meant. No, it's totally, but I went with it because I'm like, okay, we got a yes. That's awesome. And so I put it together an event for our 5th and 6th graders. This is an example of actually what not to do. So, to get 5th and 6th graders to help landscape the front lawn of a school. And it was awful. It was not the partnership that I had hoped for. Obviously the kids, like for the first 20 minutes, were really excited about raking and weeding and all that. And then, that particular project ended up really relying more on their parents and my husband and me landscaping. And that didn't really go where I wanted it to go. And then the principal ended up leaving. And so then it took a little while, and then the new principal came in. And so I tried again. So I asked to meet with her, and we actually met for breakfast, and we just talked. As it turns out, we had a mutual friend, but I just sat and asked how the church could support her and how we could partner with her. What are some needs that they have in the school? And that's really where it started.
And you picked the closest elementary school. Was what you did? Yeah.
Yep.
That's good.
The other thing too, just getting into the focus of children's ministry, we also track where our kids go to school, so that I know not only is that church the closest in proximity, but there's a huge percentage of our church kids that attend that school. So I feel like that automatically gives me a little bit of an in, because there's already relationships established within the school.
Mm-hmm. How long ago was this?
This most recent one was, it's been 4 years. I was surprised to find out about that. And so this partnership has really gone very, very well. After meeting with the principal, I met with a school counselor, and I think the school counselor is a wealth of information. And so that first year, for me, they asked if I would just come in once a week and meet one-on-one to do some intervention with kids. So I had about 10 kids. And at first I thought, well, it's definitely better than landscaping. But how am I going to really, 10 kids, there's like 300 kids in that school. And so I was disappointed, but I did what I could to get into the walls of the school and into the hallways of the school. And then I've been blown away by what God has done. So that getting into the school, I think, is the first challenge. And really, that's the big step. Get into the school and then let God do what only He can do. So I sat in the hallway, which was awesome because, again, there are a lot of kids from the church that go to that school. So I'm sitting in the hallway working one-on-one with these kids. And it was, there were about 10 kids. And as I'm sitting there, I hear, "Hi, Miss Becky," as kids are walking down the hallway. And then you hear, "Who's Miss Becky?" "Oh, she's at the church. You should come to the church." All I'm doing is helping a little guy learn his alphabet, and God is allowing other kids from the church to walk by, and they start they start inviting their friends to church. That's awesome. Really where it started. Yeah.
So in the 4 years, you've done the intervention, you helped with some landscaping.
Yeah.
What else have you done? What does that partnership look like? And maybe It's even grown and changed, but what are some of the different things you've done? Cause I'm sure that's what some people are thinking too is, what are you doing in partnership with the school that's helping serve them and maybe even connect people to the church?
Yep. So, it started with that those two initial conversations. And then, I was very strategic about what I said yes to. And so even though it didn't look like I thought it would look, that intervention, I thought, well, there's 10 kids I can build a relationship with. So I think the most important thing was I said yes. And then I showed up consistently. And then I also, volunteered and asked, could I come to the parent organization meetings and, whatever it is, the PTA meetings, and they said yes. And so I went to those meetings and just prayerfully listened to their needs, and then was very strategic about what I said yes to. So I heard that they needed volunteers for field day to hand out popsicles. And I thought, okay, that's exactly what I could commit to. It was a one-time event where I was going to be able to connect potentially with 300 kids. And again, they're kids that a lot of them go to the church. So I was probably the most popular person that day because I'm the popsicle lady standing there at field day, which is an exciting day anyways. And so I just passed out popsicles, and then there were opportunities to say hi to teachers, and just they recognized me because I'd been in the hallway helping with intervention. I connected with the president of the parent organization, and it just has built from there. So I've been very strategic about what I've said yes to. They need volunteers just like we need volunteers in the children's ministry. So there's a common need there. So I can understand what a blessing it is for them to have people who say yes and then follow through and show up. So I just focused on being that for them. After the field day, they asked if I would be interested in helping with the school dance. And I thought, I didn't say yes right away, just thought about it. And then I thought, you know what, if I pull the families from the church that I already know and see if some of them could help me with that, we could, I'm sure, pull this off because we do lots of events at the church. So it really wasn't it sounded like a big event, but it was fairly easy to do because I'm used to doing events in children's ministry. So we did that. It was even a great opportunity. I knew that there was a new family that had just moved into the neighborhood that had just recently started attending the church, and their daughter was going to be starting the school year, the next year in that school. So I pulled them in, and it gave them an opportunity to get to know the school. Their little girl, she's so outgoing. She actually made friends at the dance that night. And it was just a bridging really of the church and the school as a dance was going on. You know, it was really a neat thing. So after that, then they wanted me to continue doing the dance, of course, but they changed the times of the dance, and it was really close to an event that we have at the church. So I did have to turn that down. And then they offered me the position of secretary on the parent meeting or the parent team. And I am very strategic about what I say yes to. And I respectfully turned that down so that it would free me up to say yes to events that are going to make a bigger impact.
So a lot of this clearly is, it's not like you talk with the school and, hey, let's do this whole program.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you did.
Yep.
I think that's where some people's minds would be, oh, you started an after school program or, which a lot of people do. And that's great. This is more just organic, having conversations relationally. Oh, you need help here.
Yep.
That kind of thing. Has anything ever developed out of it that's like that? That's more you and the school working together to create something that's new? Or is it really the whole time it's been you're helping serve them, they're tapping into you when they need help?
Right. We have not, I'm trying to think. There hasn't been like an after school program that's bridged off of this. But what we're seeing is there's more and more opportunities that are opening up.
You're saying something though that is reminding me that because we tried this years ago. We tried to we've partnered with schools in different ways, but one things we tried to do years ago was we use Orange curriculum and they create a family experience. Yeah. And some people may not be familiar with this, but Orange also has kind of a school values curriculum called Core Essentials, and there are schools in our area that use it. And what happens is the essential, like the character essential that they're talking about in March or whatever, is the same thing they're talking about in the 252 curriculum for elementary kids. So it's kind of cool because it could line up. And we were doing a family experience at our church, and we were trying to see if there was a school that wanted to partner, and maybe we could do like an assembly version of it with, and obviously we wouldn't be able to preach from the Bible or tell that Bible story, but partner that way. But anyway, in that experience, and that was years ago now, I learned that the school counselor was like the one to go to. And I've heard that from other people too. And it sounds like that's similar for you, that's really been the connection that's made the most difference. And you even mentioned you talked to the principal, which is great, but I've heard that the school counselor is the way to go for a lot of people.
Yes, I agree. I think the principal is first because you need to get permission, but then to really start to dream and understand what the needs are, you need to go to the counselor. And so one thing that I had proposed, and this goes off of what am I already doing in ministry that I could just tweak slightly. So our summer program, a lot of churches call it Vacation Bible School. We call it Summer XP. We always did some kind of service project or outreach. And so in May, and I've been doing this for 4 years, I think. In May, I'll meet with the counselor and say, hey, what are some needs and how could we make our Summer XP offering or outreach program benefit the school? And so that has been really cool too. That one year we filled backpacks. So the school system or the school district gives us what kindergartners need, the supply list of kindergarten and all the way through 5th grade. And so what we did in conjunction or with the blessing of the counselor, we bought a backpack for every grade level, one for each gender. And then we filled those as part of our Summer XP program. And then the next year, I know one time we just collected money and then we were able to purchase gift certificates at a local teacher store, supply store for all the teachers at the school. This year it's morphed into, during Summer XP, we found out that when I met with the counselor, I found out that there's a lot of kids lower economic and they come to school with no snack during the day, and a lot of them are on free and reduced lunch. And so then teachers are going and spending money to buy snacks for their kids to have during the day. And so we did a snack shack collection at Summer XP. And then that turned into, every classroom now, actually what we found out from Summer XP, church families brought in Pop-Tarts and way cool, fun cereal bars. Well, then we ended up finding out once we took those to the schools that then kids who could bring snack were forgetting their snack because they really liked what we were bringing in, which is so funny. So then it morphed into every classroom now has a plastic bin that the church purchased, and now we fill it with goldfish crackers or pretzels. And so now the teachers don't have to spend some of their hard-earned money on giving kids snacks, and each classroom now has one of these bins. But we took it a step further in that now that during the school year we have our midweek program, and we always have a thing called Projects with a Purpose. And so one of our projects was to decorate those bins. And so at church, we're decorating the bins. And I said to the kids, you can't put Jesus loves you, or you can't put Bible verses on it because it's going to the school. However, let's put some encouraging things on there. So they did. And then the day came when we delivered the bins to the school, and every classroom got one. And I never thought about the fact that the church kids would see the bins and the labels that they'd made come into their classroom. And that was another opportunity. My daughter came home and was excited because her friend who comes to our midweek programs was thrilled to point out to her whole class, hey, I made this at Tuesday Night Live. And then it led into, well, what's Tuesday Night Live? Oh, it's a thing at the church. You should come. Just how God uses things like that, where all we're trying to do is just support and help the student. And then God does what he does, and he makes connections there and uses kids to draw them in. I just love it.
I imagine it's hard to measure this or know for sure, but what has the impact been with the partnership with schools in terms of, because part of it you do just to serve the school, not with no end in mind, but there could be this thing where kids get invited and more people come to your church because of the connection. Have you seen that? Can you even tell, or is it a thing where it's hard to know?
It's hard to know. Exactly. But I mean, some of the things that we have seen. So as I'm going in, I've already built these relationships with the school. It's changing my mindset as a children's pastor. So I find that so take that midweek program that we have, for example. I market it differently because now I'm thinking in terms of the community and the school. So what is it that parents, knowing that there's low economic status, knowing that there's a lot of single parents in the school, because I've learned all that from the counselor, how can I take a program that we're already doing and market it differently? So our Tuesday night program, instead of promoting it as I used to for church families, I now promote it as, hey, it's a drop-off program. All kids are welcome from 6:30 to 8 on Tuesday night. Bring your kids and drop them off. We will tire them out. We'll have a great time, and you can get a much-needed break in the middle of the week. And we have seen kids inviting their friends and kids from the school as word has gotten out. And as little conversations are happening in the hallway at school, hey, come to Tuesday Night Live. Like, we're seeing more kids from that particular school coming on Tuesday night because I think we're marketing it a little bit differently and thinking in terms of the community rather than church.
What's Tuesday night look like compared to Sunday morning for you?
So Tuesday, yeah.
Because it sounds like you're getting more of those visitors Tuesday night than you are Sunday morning.
Exactly. That is exactly what's happening. So Tuesday night, I think of it kind of like a mini VBS or summer XP for us. So knowing that the kids have been in school all day, we try to keep them active. So they have 3 20-minute rotations. We divide them out by grade level, put a couple grade levels together. And we put them in crews. CREWS, crews. And so they have a crew leader. So there's a little bit of an opportunity to connect with your crew leader. They go into crew time, which is introducing the Bible study for the night, the topic of the Bible story. We're this year focusing on fruit of the Spirit. So each week it's a different fruit. Then they rotate. They'll go to project with a purpose. And so that is where we're doing a lot of our events to reach the community. So that's where the kids decorated the snack bins for the school. Or last week, they made bookmarks for a special needs ministry dance that we have at the church once a week or once a month for adults. Or they've done things for the bus drivers, the local school district. Once a year, we do a thank you to the bus drivers. So the kids always make some kind of thing that we give to the bus drivers. And then we have a gym. So you have to have kids run around in the gym. So we have a game time. And then we end it with Final 15, which is everybody together in the sanctuary. And we do some worship and just talk about the topic for the night. I challenge the kids. How are you going to, like this past week, show kindness? What if we started a kindness movement starting from Tuesday Night Live? Like, what if could you just show kindness to one person each day and see how that spreads? And then we pray, and that's that. And parents and grandparents are very receptive. And we've seen, like you said, we've seen more kids bringing friends, more community kids at that midweek time than on Sunday mornings.
Do someone make the jump to Sunday too? I guess maybe if their family starts attending.
Yes,
they show up on Sunday.
Yep. So that's the prayer that they do make that jump. And we've seen it. We've seen it happening with families. There was a grandma right around Christmas time that she faithfully has been bringing her granddaughter and her granddaughter's friend. And then on Sunday morning, their grandma has brought her granddaughter. And so that we celebrate that huge when we get somebody to make that transition and start to really get involved in the church.
That's great. So you've done this for a little while now. Maybe even talk with others. Are there other leaders, partnering with schools? Are there other churches in your area? Because you lead a network of children's ministry leaders too. Like, are you seeing some of this outside of your church and that partnership with the school? And is there anything different that they're doing?
Well, yes, there's a strong church school partnership with Toledo Public Schools, so much so that the superintendent of Toledo Schools created a position for someone to oversee church school partnerships. It's a bigger district than the one where I am, but there are a lot of churches that have really effective partnerships going. We see exactly what you were describing with the character-based education. There's a church that does on Friday nights once a month, whatever the character theme is in the school, they do a biblical topic, same character trait. They do a biblical approach on a Friday night. It's a drop-off program for kids, and that's been very effective. We also
at the school or at the church?
At the church and the school. Yep.
Yeah, gotcha. And the school helps promote it.
Exactly, because it's aligned with what the school's already doing. I love that.
Yeah, but it's at the church, so they're, like you said, they're teaching the Bible in it, and the school's promoting it, that's pretty rare. That's cool.
Yes, it is. And there's a school or a church in the area. This is kind of a funny story. They learned what not to do, and their big thing, they thankfully have a 15-year partnership going with the local school. But initially, the church thought, hey, let's partner with this school. And so they got all excited and thought, oh, let's do backpacks filled with school supplies. And so they spent all summer getting the backpacks together, letting the church congregation know. And so congregants are bringing in donations. And so they were so excited to take these backpacks over to the school. And they did, but then found out the school kids already have access to backpacks and school supplies through local businesses. Yeah. So they learned a very important thing is you need to take time to establish the felt need. Don't assume that you know what's going to bless a school. You need to get in there, build that relationship, and then find out what the felt needs are. So they took those school supplies and opened up a school supply shop. It's for free for teachers. And so I don't remember if it's once a week or once a month, teachers can go and get the supplies that they need for their classroom. And then you hear I've heard other groups. There's a church that decided they were going to partner with a school, and you know what, let's bless the staff. And so we're just going to bring in homemade baked goods on Wednesdays. Well, now the staff calls it Wonderful Wednesdays, and they're even sharing prayer requests with the other staff or with the church staff. And so there's a huge partnership and just blessing that's coming out of that. Another thing that's happening a lot in the Toledo area, I'm involved in it in our school too, is there's an organization called Keep Watch Prayer. And they have prayer walks happening in many, many, many schools in this area, and then actually expanded out. And there's a district in Minnesota that's doing it too. But it's between parents and school staff. They meet together either before or after school and pray together and follow a prayer strategy that the Keep Watch organization hands out. So I've been part of that at our school. Monday mornings, I meet with two of the teachers and a couple parents, and we just pray together and then walk the halls of the school before school, just praying God's blessing. And there's always a topic for the week, and we pray those scriptures over the school. And that really has opened up opportunities to be seen in the school. And I'm praying that will take it further. I hear of other schools where teachers will pull prayer walkers into their classroom and say, hey, could you pray for me? Or could you pray for this student? Or it's just really, really growing. And it's been neat to see how God's using that to build relationships and helping then to really bridge a gap too, I think, between people and the school as well.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's a lot of it going on in your area. I find that and I'm not sure what the culture would be like there in Ohio, but in the Northeast, you find that if you're going to partner with schools, you definitely have to have kind of the relational method that you use where you just met with them and asked, how can we help and all that. Cause I know of, student pastors in other parts of the country that'll have lunch with their students and that's awesome. Totally. I mean, and in certain cases, if you build a relationship, you could do that here, but you don't just walk in off the street and do that.
Right. Right.
Cause it just, it's not normal. But we have church plants that have met in schools, and they have done a great job serving them and creating a partnership with them too. So it's kind of like there's all kinds of rules and policies that sometimes get in the way, but the relationships seem to go through all that. If you can build it that way first, that's really good. Is there anything else you'd want to add? And if not, I'd love for you to tell how people can connect with you if they have any questions, or maybe they're looking to partner with schools more and just have a few questions for you or want to hear some more about what you're doing.
Sure. Well, one thing that I've thought about, I think for too long, and I fell to this too, I was so afraid of, I would want to reach out to a school, but think, no, there's separation of church and state. And I would allow that to be a barrier. And I've seen schools not want to partner with churches because of separation of church and state. So I think the way to, rather than focusing on fear and allowing that to be a barrier, I think it just needs to be a reminder to us of the importance of just going in and establishing the felt need. Don't go in all churchy. I'm not wearing my John 3:16 shirt and waving pom-poms. I'm just going in and helping to meet needs, and then let God do what only he could do. And then on the ministry standpoint, then just being more community focused, because once what I've found is with that being more of my mindset, it's just allowing me to walk through the doors that God is opening or bridge gaps that God is bridging. A recent story that's just happened 2 days ago. I've been volunteering. Well, I guess I didn't mention that what ended up happening too is we ended up moving, my family, we moved into the same neighborhood as the church and the school. So the last 3 years, my kids have been attending that particular school. So it's been awesome because now I'm building relationships with my kids' friends, and that's leading to more opportunities. So I'm not saying that every children's pastor needs to move into the neighborhood of their church and school, but it's been pretty amazing. So anyways, I on Mondays I go and I am in both of my kids' classes, and I noticed that there was a new student that had just moved in, and his behavior is off the charts. And just to watch this sweet kindergarten teacher try to reel him in and give him the attention he needs, it's just, wow, she's going through a lot. He's going through a lot. And so I talked to her the other night at the parent organization meeting, and just said, is there anything I can do? Can I come in and read with him or try to get some tutors from the church to come? And she said, he is so starved for attention. This is his third school this school year, and this is his fourth home this school year that he's lived in. And as she was talking, I was reminded of an older woman at the church, and I was trying to recruit her for children's ministry a few weeks ago. And I said, where do you see God calling you to serve? And of course, I'm thinking within the church. And she said, well, I'm a retired speech teacher, and God really is laying it on my heart to somehow get into the schools and help tutor kids. And at that moment, I had no idea of what that would look like. But then on Wednesday, as I'm talking with the teacher, I realized, that is exactly what God probably is setting up here. So I'm excited to contact this woman and say, hey, remember how God gave you that vision and that desire? I think I have a student for you. So just being more community minded, and I just want to encourage people in that way. Just God can use the relationships that you're building as you're meeting felt needs in the school. He can use that in such a mighty way to bridge some relationships between the church and the school. I don't have a curriculum to push. I don't have an after-school program to promote. I just have maybe a tweak in your mindset, and it's been amazing to see how God's used that. Another thought I have too is there are so many opportunities given by the schools or given by organizations that allow you into the school. Could you sub? Do you have extra time in your hand and in life, and maybe you're working part-time at the church and looking for something else? What if you were a sub, or what if you were able to be a paraprofessional in the school? Or are there organizations like Keep Watch Prayer or Young Life or, athletes? Is it, I'm trying to think of FCA. Yes, yeah. Exactly. So getting involved there, and getting your foot in the door, and then just being present and showing up when you say you're going to show up, and then allow God to bridge those gaps.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think, even I'm trying to think of some other, stories or, accounts I've heard of people partnering with schools. And even if it has developed into, because we did have a guest on the podcast one time, it talked about a middle school after school program that she helped start. But if you go all the way to the beginning, it's still relationship. It was still a conversation that started, here, and you know what I mean? So that's easy. That's the place to start. Right. So
right.
That's good.
Right.
If people want to, if they have any questions or they want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Sure. I have a website, BeckyRydman.com. That's RYDMAN.com. And that's a great place to start. We're excited to be launching some podcasts and other opportunities on that. So, and I'd love to connect with people through there too, or say hello at BeckyRydman.com. You could reach me that way too. Excellent.
Well, Becky, thanks for doing this great work with schools there. And so many churches in your area are doing things with schools and having a partnership that's having an impact. So thanks for doing that. And then thanks for sharing with us on this podcast what that's like and how it started and how it's going. We appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, there you go. That was great to hear from Becky and her story about how she's reaching kids and students in the community by partnering with schools. I think the action steps coming out of there that I think about are pretty simple. Right? Pick one school, probably a school that your church has influence with. Maybe some of those kids go to your church. Maybe it's the closest school, whatever it might be, and start a partnership. Reach out, talk to someone to see if there's a way you can serve them the same way that Becky did. I know in our case, I think about the people who attend our church who work in the schools around us, and that's an easy place to start because there's already a relationship there. So start that way, serve them. Next step might be to gather some parents and use that group to brainstorm ideas and ways that you can continue to partner with schools. Because I know something else I think about in our church is how many parents serve in, staff positions in schools, but also in like PTAs in key positions. And so the relationships you may need to get a partnership going may already exist in your church. I think taking those two steps could start a partnership for you, and who knows what that might grow into. If you want to get all the links and show notes, you can find them at nickblevins.com/episode 138. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that 5 Barriers to Volunteer Recruitment course is brand new. You can get it for just $10 for the next 2 weeks. And you can use the code podcast to get that. Just head to ministryboost.org. Thanks for listening. Hope this was helpful. I hope you can partner with schools in your community. And really, ultimately, I hope you can reach more and more and more kids and students who are in your communities that are not a part of any church. That's my prayer for you. And maybe this is one way that you'll do that. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.